the man who conquered the world but couldn't conquer his need to be loved. You want to know what killed the most powerful man in Rome? It wasn't the 23 stab wounds. It wasn't the conspiracy. It wasn't even Brutus, though that's the story they tell in schools. What killed Gaius Julius Caesar was something far more insidious, something that's killing you right now in this exact moment as you read these words. His niceness, his pathological need to be loved, to be seen as merciful, to be remembered not just as a conqueror, but as a good man. And on the Ides of March 44 BC, that need became a blade. 23 blades actually, each one held by a man he had spared, protected, forgiven, men he tried to turn into friends. But here's what they don't teach you in history class. What they can't teach you because it would reveal too much about how power actually works. Caesar's assassination wasn't a tragedy. It was a tutorial. A masterclass in what happens when you confuse power with popularity. When you mistake being feared for being hated. When you think being merciful makes you moral instead of what it actually makes you, weak. And if you're paying attention, if you're one of the few who can handle what I'm about to show you, you'll see that Caesar's fatal mistake is the same one you make every single day. The difference? You're just dying slower. Let me take you back to a moment most historians gloss over. It's after the Civil War. Caesar has won. Pompey is dead. The Senate is broken. Rome is his. He stands at the threshold of absolute power. And he makes a choice. Instead of purging his enemies, instead of doing what every successful tyrant in history understood was necessary, he pardons them, all of them. He invites them back into the Senate. He gives them positions of honor. He even promotes some to positions of power. Why? Because he wants to be loved. Because somewhere in his psychology, winning wasn't enough. Conquering wasn't enough. Having the most powerful military force in the known world wasn't enough. He needed them to choose him, to respect him, to see him as more than a conqueror. He needed to be the good guy. Freud would recognize this immediately. This is reaction formation in its purest form, the psychological mechanism where you express the opposite of what you truly feel, because the authentic impulse is too threatening. Caesar didn't want to be merciful. He wanted to be devastating. He wanted to salt the earth with his enemies and build monuments from their bones. Every conqueror does. That's what conquest is. But that impulse terrified him. Why? Because it would make him the tyrant, the villain, the thing he swore he'd never become. So he overcompensated, became excessively merciful, pathologically forgiving, and called it virtue. Sound familiar? How many times have you swallowed your rage and called it taking the high road? How many times have you forgiven people who never even apologized and told yourself it was because you're evolved? You're not evolved. You're terrified of your own power, just like Caesar. And just like Caesar, that terror will kill you. Now let me show you something most people miss entirely, something only visible when you understand the 7 levels of transformation. Caesar didn't start at the top. He started where you are, at level 1, the sleeper. Young Caesar was a charming politician, eloquent, well-liked. He understood the game of Roman politics. Smile, make alliances, say what people want to hear, climb the ladder. He was performing, playing the role of promising young senator, and he was good at it. So good that he didn't even realize he was acting. He thought this was who he was. The sleeper always thinks the mask is the face. Caesar would show up to Senate meetings, laugh at jokes he found insulting, praise men he despised, all while believing this was diplomacy. This was sophistication. This was how civilized men behaved. He was unconsciously performing goodness, believing it was genuine. Every handshake was a transaction he wasn't aware he was making. Every smile was a down payment on approval he thought he'd already earned, until he wasn't. The moment that changes everything, the moment he wakes up, is when he's captured by pirates. 25 years old, kidnapped, held for ransom, and something crystallizes in that moment. The pirates mock him, treat him like he's weak, unimportant, just another rich Roman boy whose family will pay to get him back. And Caesar laughs, not because he thinks it's funny, but because he suddenly sees what they don't. He sees that he's been playing small his entire life, that the nice young senator is a costume, a cage. He tells the pirates he's worth far more than they're asking. He tells them that when he's free, he'll come back and crucify every single one of them. They laugh, think he's joking. He's not. The moment the ransom is paid and he's released, he raises a fleet, returns, captures them all, and crucifies them. Every single one. This is level 2. The performer. Now he's awake. Now he knows he's been performing. But he's still trapped in the performance. He's just conscious of it now. And that consciousness makes it hurt more. For the next decade, Caesar performs brilliance. He becomes the most popular man in Rome through calculated acts of generosity, strategic alliances, public works. He throws games that bankrupt him. He builds monuments. He gives speeches that make crowds weep. But here's what's happening internally. Every act of generosity is calculated. Every friendship is strategic. He knows he's performing now. He can feel the gap between who he is and who he's pretending to be. And that gap burns. The performer stage is psychological torture. You're awake enough to see the lie, but not free enough to stop living it. Caesar spent years here, smiling in public while screaming internally, wondering when the performance would finally become real. It never does. He's figured out the game, but he's still playing someone else's game, still seeking validation from the Senate, from the people, from history. Then comes Gaul. 9 years of conquest, 9 years of learning that nice guys don't conquer territories the size of Western Europe. 9 years of understanding that mercy is a luxury you can only afford after victory, not a strategy for achieving it. This is where Caesar moves from level 2 to level 3, the calculator. In Gaul, he's surgical, strategic. He studies his enemies, identifies their weaknesses, exploits them with precision. When a tribe surrenders, he decides whether to show mercy or brutality based entirely on what sends the right message to the other tribes. Mercy becomes a tactic, not a value. Cruelty becomes a tool, not a character flaw. He learns that power isn't about being liked, it's about being necessary. He becomes indispensable to Rome, the man who brings glory, wealth, territory, security. And he writes about it all in third person. Caesar did this, Caesar did that, creating mythology while living it, crafting his image with the precision of a military operation. But even this is still a form of performance. He's calculating what history will think of him. Every battle, every decision filtered through. How will this make me look? Watch how this plays out in the Gallic campaigns. When he massacres the Usapetes and Tencteri tribes, hundreds of thousands dead, he justifies it in his writings. Explains why it was necessary, strategic, defensive even. He's not writing for the Senate, he's writing for eternity. Still performing, just for a bigger audience. Most successful men die here. At level 3. They master the tactics of power but never transcend the need for external validation. They build empires but remain slaves to their reputation. Caesar almost gets stuck here too, until he crosses the Rubicon. This is the moment, the fulcrum, the point where everything changes. Standing at that river, Caesar faces a choice. Follow the law, disband his army, return to Rome as a civilian and likely face trial and death. Or cross with his legions, an act of treason, and start a civil war. The calculator would have weighed options, calculated odds, sought advice. Caesar says one phrase, alia iacta est, the die is cast, and crosses. This is level 4, the operator. He's not calculating anymore. He's operating from a different center entirely. Not what will make them like me, but what do I actually want? He wants Rome, all of it, not because he's asked permission, but because he's decided it's his. The civil war is brutal. Caesar moves with a speed that terrifies his enemies. He doesn't wait for them to organize. He doesn't play by their rules. He writes new rules with every march, every battle, every victory. And here's where you see the shift in his psychology. He stops justifying. When he defeats Pompey's forces at Pharsalus, he doesn't write lengthy explanations about why he had to do it. He just does it. The operator has discovered something intoxicating: self-approval. He's tasted what it's like to act from internal validation rather than external permission, and it's more powerful than any drug. But here's the trap, and this is what kills most men who reach level 4. They think this is freedom. They think that operating from what I want instead of what they want means they've transcended the game. They haven't. They're still playing, just with different rules. The ego is still running the show. It's just a more sophisticated ego now. And sophisticated egos are more dangerous than crude ones because they're better at lying to themselves. And when he wins, when Pompey is dead and the Senate is shattered, he stands at the threshold of absolute power. This is where most men who achieve power make their fatal mistake. They think level 4 is the end. They think that operating from self-approval, from internal validation, from I've decided what I want, they think that's freedom. It's not. It's still ego, just a more sophisticated ego. And ego needs feeding, needs validation, needs to be seen as not just powerful, but good. Which brings us back to that moment, the moment of mercy. Caesar pardons his enemies, Brutus, Cassius, dozens of senators who fought against him, men who wanted him dead, men who spent fortunes trying to kill him. He brings them back, gives them positions, tells himself, tells everyone that he's above revenge, that he's evolved beyond the petty brutality of lesser men. And here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. Here's where you see the machinery of self-deception at its finest. Caesar convinces himself that his mercy is strength, that only the truly powerful can afford to forgive, that his clemency proves he's not like other tyrants. But watch what he's actually doing. He's performing. Again, he's performing for history, for the idea of himself he wants to be, for the legacy he's constructing. He thinks he's moved to level 5, the architect. He thinks he's building a new Rome, a Rome where power and mercy coexist, where the strong can afford to be gentle, where the lion can sleep with the lamb. But he hasn't actually moved to level 5. He's still at level 4, lying to himself about what level he's on. How do I know? Because the true architect doesn't care about being seen as merciful. He does what the architecture requires. Sometimes that's mercy, sometimes that's amputation. The architect understands you can't build a new structure on a rotted foundation. You can't create a new Rome while keeping the old Senate intact. You can't transform a system by making it comfortable. But Caesar needed to be comfortable, needed to be loved, needed to believe that his enemies could become his friends if he just showed them how magnanimous he could be. Robert Greene would later write about this in the 48 Laws of Power. Crush your enemy totally. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. Caesar left dozens of embers burning, called it mercy, called it strength. It was neither. It was fear dressed as virtue. Now let me show you the mechanism that makes this fatal, the psychology that turns mercy into murder. When you forgive someone from a position of power, when you spare them when you could destroy them, you're not creating gratitude. You're creating debt, and humans hate being in debt, especially moral debt, especially debt they didn't ask for. Every time Brutus saw Caesar after being pardoned, he felt that debt. Every time he sat in the Senate that Caesar allowed him to rejoin, every time he held a position Caesar granted him, every honor was a chain, every mercy was a weight. Caesar thought he was building loyalty. He was building resentment, because mercy from a position of dominance isn't kindness. It's a daily reminder that you exist at someone else's pleasure, that your life, your position, your dignity, all of it is a gift you didn't earn, a gift you can't repay, a gift that makes you less than the giver. And the only way to escape that weight, to eliminate the debt, eliminate the creditor. This is what Caesar never understood. This is what you don't understand when you're nice to people who haven't earned it, who don't want it, who are humiliated by it. You think you're building bridges, you're building bombs. Machiavelli, writing 1500 years later, understood what Caesar didn't. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones they cannot. Caesar injured his enemies but didn't crush them. He humiliated them with his mercy. And humiliation, unlike fear, always seeks revenge. For 3 years, Caesar rules Rome. And every day he performs magnanimity, forgives slights, overlooks conspiracies, refuses the crown when offered 3 times because he wants them to love him enough to insist. They never insist. Instead, they sharpen their knives. And here's what almost no one talks about. Caesar knew. He knew they were plotting. He received warnings, omens. His wife had nightmares. A soothsayer told him to beware the Ides of March. His friends begged him not to go to the Senate that day. He went anyway. Why? Because admitting the danger would mean admitting his mercy had failed. Would mean acknowledging that you can't love your way out of a power vacuum. Would mean facing the truth he'd spent 3 years running from. They would never love him. They couldn't, because his very existence was their humiliation. So he walked into the theater of Pompey knowing he might not walk out. And part of him, the part that was exhausted from performing, from pretending, from the weight of being loved, part of him welcomed it. And on March 15th, 44 BC, at the theater of Pompey, surrounded by the men he pardoned, Caesar finally learns the cost of being nice. 23 stab wounds. The first few he fights back, tries to defend himself, but then he sees Brutus, his protege, his friend, the man he spared, the man he elevated. Some historians say Brutus might have been his son, and Caesar stops fighting. Et tu, Brute, even you? Those are his last words, not a military command, not a curse, a question. Because even at the end, even as he's dying, Caesar can't let go of his need to be loved. He's not horrified by the betrayal. He's confused by it. How could Brutus do this after everything Caesar did for him? But that's exactly why Brutus did it. Because of everything Caesar did for him. Every act of mercy was a chain. Every gesture of clemency was a weight. Every moment of forgiveness was a reminder that Brutus existed at Caesar's pleasure. And men cannot live under the weight of unearned gifts. It crushes them, twists them. Eventually, they'll do anything to escape that weight, even murder the man who gave it to them. Especially murder the man who gave it to them. Now let me tell you what almost no one understands about this moment. Caesar's assassination wasn't personal, it was structural. He created a system that required him to be nice, that demanded he perform mercy, that punished him for showing his true power. Why? Because he never moved past level 4. He never became the architect who builds new systems. He remained the operator trying to function within the old one. A true level 5, a true architect, would have seen what Caesar couldn't. You can't transform Rome by being Roman. You can't change the game by playing it better. You have to break the game entirely. Augustus understood this. Caesar's heir, his adopted son. When he finally takes power after years of civil war, he doesn't pardon his enemies. He doesn't try to be loved by the Senate. He doesn't perform mercy. He systematically dismantles every structure that could threaten him. Then he builds new ones where his power isn't dependent on anyone's approval. He executes or exiles Caesar's assassins. He doesn't forgive them. He doesn't give them second chances. He removes them from the board entirely. Then, and this is the genius move, he doesn't call himself emperor. He calls himself first citizen, princeps. He keeps the appearance of the republic while gutting its power. He gives the Senate the illusion of authority while holding all the real levers. He lets them debate while he decides. He allows them to feel important while making them irrelevant. This is level 5. The architect doesn't destroy what doesn't need destroying. He repurposes it. He understands that sometimes the most effective revolution leaves the old structures standing but hollow. And he rules for 40 years. Dies in his bed, at peace. The difference between Caesar and Augustus? Augustus reached level 5. He stopped trying to be good and started being effective. He understood what Caesar never could. The architect doesn't build with the materials he wishes he had. He builds with the materials that exist. And sometimes those materials are blood. But even level 5 isn't the end. There's level 6. The sovereign. Marcus Aurelius touched it, the philosopher-emperor, the man who understood that power and wisdom aren't opposites, they're fuel and fire. The sovereign doesn't need to perform mercy or cruelty. He acts from truth. Pure, unfiltered, surgical truth. When truth requires gentleness, he's gentle. When it requires devastation, he devastates. And neither comes from ego. Both come from the same source, reality. Imagine Marcus Aurelius facing Caesar's choice. The conspirators caught, waiting for judgment. He wouldn't pardon them to be loved. He wouldn't execute them to be feared. He would ask, what does the empire need? If it needs their deaths to prevent future conspiracies, they die. If it needs their talents for some purpose, they live, but under conditions that serve the whole. No performance, no ego, just accuracy. Caesar never reached this level. He spent his entire life trapped between what he wanted, absolute power, and what he needed, to be loved. That contradiction killed him. The sovereign has no contradiction. He's integrated his darkness and his light, accepted his capacity for both creation and destruction. And in that acceptance, he becomes more dangerous and more trustworthy than anyone still performing goodness. Most leaders who achieve great power never reach this level. Why? Because it requires something they're not willing to give. Complete honesty about their own nature. Caesar couldn't be honest about his nature. He couldn't admit, even to himself, that he wanted absolute power. He had to dress it up as saving the republic, had to perform reluctance, had to pretend the crown was being forced on him. And that lie, that performance, created the conditions for his death. The sovereign doesn't lie, not to others, not to himself. He owns his power, all of it, the capacity to create and the capacity to destroy, the gentleness and the brutality, the light and the shadow. And in that ownership, he becomes whole, integrated, real. Then there's level 7, the void. Only one Roman ever reached it. And he did it by refusing to play the game entirely. Cincinnatus, called from his farm to save Rome, given absolute power, made dictator during a crisis, used it, won the war, then gave it all back and returned to his plow. 16 days. He held ultimate power for 16 days, then released it voluntarily. Why? Not because he was weak, not because he was afraid, not because he was performing humility, because he understood something that Caesar never could, that even Augustus couldn't fully grasp, that Marcus Aurelius only glimpsed. Power isn't something you hold, it's something you channel. The void operates from this understanding. He's so grounded in his own existence that he needs nothing from anyone, not their approval, not their fear, not even their recognition. Cincinnatus didn't need to be dictator to know his worth, didn't need the title to know his power, didn't need Rome to validate his existence. So when the crisis passed, he handed the power back. Not as a performance, not to be remembered as humble, because holding it longer served no purpose. This is the ultimate freedom. Not needing power, not avoiding it, not fearing it, simply using it when needed and releasing it when done. Paradoxically, this makes him more magnetic than anyone else, because people can feel it, the absence of need, the pure presence. Most never reach this level. Most who glimpse it run back to lower levels because the altitude is unbearable, because it requires letting go of everything, even the identity of being powerful. Caesar could never let go. Even at the end, with the daggers in his chest, he was still holding on, still asking why, still needing them to love him. The void doesn't ask why. The void simply is. So what do you do with this? You're not Caesar. You're not building empires or crossing rivers with legions, but you're making his mistake every single day. Every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace. Every time you apologize for taking up space. Every time you perform niceness hoping someone will finally see your worth. You're standing at the theater of Pompey, surrounded by people you tried to turn into friends, and the knives are already out. Maybe not literal knives, but they're there, in the form of disrespect disguised as jokes, boundaries violated with smiles, ambitions crushed with realistic advice, dreams killed with "I'm just being honest." And you take it because you're nice, Because you don't want to cause problems. Because you think if you're just patient enough, kind enough, understanding enough, they'll finally see your value. They won't. Because you haven't seen your own value. And people only see in you what you see in yourself. Here's your protocol. Your escape route from Caesar's fate. For the next 30 days, conduct an experiment. Every time you're about to be nice, about to say something you don't mean, agree to something you don't want, apologize for something you didn't do, stop. Not because you should be mean, but because you should be accurate. If someone asks how you are and you're not fine, say, "I'm not great, actually." If someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, say, "I can't do that." No explanation, no justification, just truth. And here's what will happen. What must happen. Week 1 will be chaos. Your nervous system will scream. Every fiber of your being will want to add explanation, to soften the blow, to apologize for your honesty. Resist. Week 2, some people will disappear. They'll stop calling, stop texting, suddenly be busy. Good. Those people were never there for you. They were there for the performance, for the emotional utility you provided. They were using you the same way the Senate used Caesar. Let them go. Week 3, something shifts. The people who remain, they'll start treating you differently. More respect, more directness, more equality. Why? Because you stopped being a mirror reflecting what they wanted and started being a fire with its own heat. Week 4, you'll notice something extraordinary. You have more energy, more clarity, more presence. Because you're no longer hemorrhaging life force through the 1,000 small lies of niceness. And fires have a quality mirrors don't. They're useful, real, necessary. Mirrors are decoration, fires are survival. Now here's the part that separates those who will act from those who will just feel something and do nothing. Caesar knew all of this. On some level he understood. You think he didn't see the conspiracy forming? You think he didn't notice the whispers? The meetings he wasn't invited to? The way certain senators looked at him? He knew. And he did nothing. Why? Because doing something would have required him to admit what he really was. A conqueror, a tyrant, a man who took power because he wanted it, not because the Republic needed saving, and that admission terrified him more than death. So he walked into the theater of Pompey knowing he might not walk out, and part of him, the part that was exhausted from performing, from pretending, from the weight of being loved, part of him welcomed it. Don't be Caesar. Don't wait for the knives. Don't spend your life performing goodness while dying inside. Don't sacrifice your truth on the altar of other people's comfort. The world doesn't need more nice guys. It has plenty. They're everywhere, smiling while they bleed, apologizing while they drown, dying slowly in quiet desperation. The world needs sovereigns, men who've looked at their capacity for both creation and destruction and accepted all of it. Men who tell the truth even when it costs them. Men who take up space without apology, not because they're cruel, because they're real. And reality, in its raw form, is the most powerful force in human interaction. So here's your choice. Path 1, close this. Forget what you read. Go back to being nice. Keep performing. Keep hoping that if you're good enough, eventually someone will choose you. Keep walking toward your own theater of Pompey. Path 2, start the experiment. Stop performing. Choose accuracy over approval. And discover what Caesar never could, that the only opinion that matters is the one you have of yourself when you look in the mirror at 3 a.m. If you choose path 2, write in the comments. Level number you're aiming for. Not for me, for you. Because when you declare where you're going publicly, you make it real. You cross your own Rubicon. But I'll be direct with you, the way Caesar's advisors should have been with him. This path isn't safe. You will lose people. You will be called selfish, difficult, changed. Some will say you've lost your way. Others will say you've become an asshole. Let them talk. Because while they're talking, you'll be building, creating, becoming. Moving through the levels they'll never understand because they're too terrified to leave level 1. The next video goes deeper into the transition between level 4 and level 5. It's the most dangerous crossing. Most men who attempt it fail. Because what you have to sacrifice, your need for approval, your identity as the good guy, your performance of virtue, most aren't willing to lose it. It's the death that comes before resurrection, the void that comes before creation, the destruction of who you were so who you could be has space to emerge. Caesar stood at that threshold. He saw what it would cost, and he chose performance over transformation. You don't have to. But if you are willing, if you're ready to cross your Rubicon, to burn your ships, to become who you actually are instead of who they need you to be, I'll see you on the other side, where the real power lives, where Caesar should have lived, but died trying to reach.